All right. It says we're live. If we are, let us know in the comments. My name is Andrea Wilson Woods. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cancer University, and I am so excited today to have you join our Ask the Author session. We are talking to Paul Stavros. Am I saying your last name right?
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. And his book is titled Don't Bring Lasagna, Tips When Someone You Love is Dealing with Cancer. And Paul is a multi-time survivor. He was diagnosed with cancer for the first time at the age of 14, and 35 years later, he was again diagnosed. Today, Paul is using his experience as a patient to help people learn how to stay meaningfully engaged and to be helpful to someone who has cancer. All right, Paul, thank you so much for joining us for this live interview.
Andrea, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you about the book.
Oh, me too. So we had some hiccups, but that's okay. We're here now.
We made it.
All right. So we are talking about your book, Don't Bring Lasagna. Fantastic title. Really, really cracked me up. And before we went live, I talked about some of the things that really stood out. So I have 4 pages of Kindle notes, if anybody can see, from Paul's book. So let's just jump right in. So I want to start with friends. And you touch on this many times in your book, and it really hit home to me because I experienced the same thing. There are friends who disappear, and there are friends who show up. And I'm actually going to quote, you said, "It always amazed me how so many of my closest friends suddenly disappeared while others leapt into action." So talk to us about that.
So that was actually kind of a big reason why I wrote this book. I was both surprised, both when I was a child and as an adult, at people's reaction to my illness. And you know, it always surprised me because sometimes the people that I thought would be there for me weren't. And people who I really didn't think, we were that close or we were that good of friends would suddenly appear out of nowhere, and they wanted to help, and they wanted to do things, and they were willing, and they were able, and they knew what to say, and they knew what to do. And Andrea, for a while that really bothered me. But when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Cancer is um, cancer is a wrecking ball for everyone it touches, not only for the patient, but for the caregivers and the friends and the family and everybody else. There's all, not just the physical, but the emotional and the financial and the spiritual and all of those pieces that go into it. And it's hard. So, you got to cut your friends a little slack. People don't know what to say. They don't know how to act. They don't know, should I hug him? Should I not hug him? Should I tease him? Should I be serious and somber? Should I? It's difficult. So, in large part, that's why I wrote the book, because I thought, there's a lot of books for people with cancer, but there's nothing out there for people of the friends of someone with cancer. What do you say? How do you do it? What should you avoid? What should you talk about? And I guess I just kind of wanted to help. And this is really from the perspective of a patient.
Yeah.
Since then, I've known a lot of people who have cancer, and I've kind of just used my own personal experiences of what I wish someone would have said or done or whatever to try to help steer that.
Yeah.
So, if I can help with that, then I'll count it as a win.
Okay, I agree on all points. So it was it was shocking to me who showed up and who didn't. And yeah, so
in some cases, even more surprising who showed up.
yeah,
Sometimes it's people you really wouldn't expect. A friend of a friend of a neighbor of a cousin of an uncle who just all of a sudden decides that they're going to help, and they're there, and they mow your lawn, and they clean your house, and you think, where did that person come from?
So Paul, I want to keep moving forward, and I want to talk about the only point in the book that I disagree with you on. So let's talk about it. I'll tell you why. So you make a real point early on saying, instead of telling me that you're willing to help, tell me what you're going to do. And I feel exactly the opposite, even though I understand your reasoning behind it. So I really feel like, and I always say this to patients and caregivers, people want to help, they want to do something, but they won't know what to do unless you tell them. And they need some guidance and direction. And I believe in the book, you made the point that that's a lot to put on the patient. But I feel like people don't know how they can help or what they can do. And I can think of something super specific. So I had one of those people, tell me, what do you want me to do? But she didn't have a clue, and she wasn't a close friend
Yeah.
to our first point at all. But then I remembered she lived in Hollywood, and my sister wanted these wig heads, those styrofoam wig heads, to put all of her wigs on, like as a display, even though she almost never wore the wigs. And I remembered she lived right by a wig shop and no one else I knew did. And I said, this is going to sound strange. Tess was her name. And I said, but Tess, can you buy some wig heads for us and bring them to Burbank? She was like, okay, all right, I'll
Big
do it.
head.
And so I want to ask, why do you feel
Yeah.
this way?
So this is my own and my wife's own personal experience, right?
Yeah.
And the phrase is common. Everybody says, "Tell me if there's anything you need," and that's great. But I don't know, Andrea, whether it's pride or whether it's stubbornness or whatever, we have a hard time calling somebody up and saying, "Hey, remember 2 weeks ago when you said, let me know if
Yeah.
there's anything you can do? We'd really love it if you'd come mow our lawn." So that was difficult for us.
Yeah.
I felt like it really put it back on us.
Right.
So
It does. Yeah.
certainly, yeah. So certainly, everybody's different, and some people are probably fine with saying, "Yeah, I'd love it if you clean my house." Those are things we struggled with. So
Yeah.
we had a few experiences where there was one time where my sister-in-law texted me and she's like, "Hey, what's your garage passcode?" And she's one of the few people that I would give my garage
Right.
passcode to. So I texted her back. When we came home that evening, the house was spotless. She had cleaned the entire house. And
Oh,
that's awesome because it was helpful, but we probably would have never asked her to do that. Now, I
okay.
will say at the end of this chapter, it does say that if you're one of those people who are willing to ask, keep a list. So you're ready. When someone says, "What can I
Yeah.
do?" You've got like, okay, here's 3 things.
Yeah, and I do think there are tools and resources, and of course, I can't think of one off the bat because Carrying Bridge is more of a communication tool.
Yeah,
But I think there are tools and resources now where people can actually sign up for things. Where
there
so you're
are.
not directly asking them, you can say, "I need these things done," and they can choose which one they want to do. And just on the cleaning point, I don't think this made it into my book at all, but a friend of mine a few times sent her housekeeper over to clean our house for us, especially right when we came home from the hospital after a round of chemo.
So
But
good.
this housekeeper stole some things from us. And like things
Exactly.
that were not valuable, but it was that they never showed up again. And I think either she took them, but or she just decided they were trash and threw them out. I
That was her reward, I suppose. So, when my sister-in-law cleaned our house, which was greatly appreciated, she moved things, and that, it's like, "Where's the blender? Where's the blender?" But she didn't
yeah.
steal anything, so
Yeah, yeah. So I mean I still remember that. It's so funny.
yeah, that's funny.
Okay, so some advice you give that I think I know my sister would totally agree with, and many, many people I've interviewed would 100% agree with is you say help the patient feel normal. So, what do you mean by that? And then what are some ways people can help a patient feel normal?
Yeah. So for me, it was, I didn't want to always be that sick person. I didn't want my whole existence to become cancer.
Right.
So what happens is when you get sick, everyone, people call but it's always, "Are you okay? How do you feel?" And every conversation, every email, every text message is about the cancer.
Yeah.
And really, for me, I just wanted to be a normal person. I wanted to be a normal kid when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a normal man. I just wanted to do normal things. So for me, what I found super helpful was when people would come over or call or whatever and talk about or do whatever we normally would have done
Yeah.
before cancer or without cancer. If we would have watched a movie, if we would have gone for a walk, if whatever it is, do that. try to give that patient the opportunity just to feel normal for a little while. It
Yeah.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's interesting. You said that how are you okay? We at one point had a pain specialist who came in, and he said, "Don't ask about the pain. Don't ask anymore." He said, "It's our job as doctors. We're going to ask. That's fine." But he said, "But I don't want any family members or caregivers or anyone around your sister to ask about her pain
Yeah.
anymore." And so we didn't, and it definitely seemed to help her because she did want just a normal teenage life back.
Yeah.
That's all she
Right.
really wanted.
Especially when
Um,
you're a kid. Your sister and I were about the same age
yeah,
when we were diagnosed. And, 14, 15-year-olds, they're not thinking about, the world. They're thinking about, I want to play baseball. I want to go
yeah,
play in the woods. I want to catch frogs, whatever. Maybe not your
yeah.
sister, but me, right? That's what I wanted to do, right?
Or thinking about the things they can't do, right? And trying
Yeah.
not to dwell on it. Like, it just broke her heart that she couldn't go to the beach. I mean,
Yeah.
now knowing what I know, I would have said, "Fuck it." We would have gone to the
Yeah.
beach,
Go
but
to the beach.
yeah,
Yeah.
go to the beach. All right. So before I jump into the next point, if you're watching live, if you're watching the replay, or if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, I can't see those comments in real time. So please be sure to comment. I will switch over to LinkedIn in a minute and see if there are any comments. But please feel free to ask Paul questions. He's really open and generous with his thoughts and his experience. And again, if you're watching the replay, and you're on LinkedIn, be sure to actually tag Paul. And that way, in a
Please.
perfect world, he'll get notified of your question or comment. So, all right, let's jump into this next one. And I love, love, love this. So, people have good intentions, right? I think he said, no, no, a cancer patient doesn't need another book. They talk about their, neighbor's cousin's second removed, blah, 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 had your cancer and they made it. Or they talk about cures. And I think I want to just quote because it was so funny. Let's see. A good friend of ours burst through our front door and proudly proclaimed that she had found a cure for lymphoma. So talk to me about people with all these good
Oh,
intentions.
Andrea, this happens so often. I'm sure anyone with cancer or a serious illness can relate to this. This
Yeah.
happened all the time. I was walking through Costco and I clearly looked like a cancer person, right? The head and I had my PIC line hanging out. And this woman came up to me and just said, "Do you have cancer?" And I was like, "Yes."
Total stranger.
Yeah, total stranger. And she talked for 15 minutes about how I should be drinking silver extract and it's proven and on and on and on. And I'm the whole time I'm thinking, I just want to get some beets and go home, like this is what I want to do, right?
Right.
But this happens all the time. And God bless them. People want to help.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do and they want to help. My wife and I probably got literally 50 or 60 books sent to us.
No.
What to
Oh
eat, how to
my God.
exercise, everything you can think of. We got emails, we got, people coming over. This carrot juice. We were supposed to just drink carrot juice for 2 weeks and we were going to be fine. The problem is that the patient is susceptible. They're willing to believe anything. They
Sure, of
want the
course.
cancer to go away. So, if you came and said something stupid, I was probably going to be like, "Okay, that's great. There's proof. I'll do it." And we want to believe that all of this stuff is going to help. The problem is it's contradictory. There's too much. I can't read 50 books.
Yeah.
And silver extract, I don't even know where to buy that. I don't know what to do. And carrot juice tastes terrible. So I think what you just need to give a little bit of grace to the patient
Yeah.
and spend a little time to talk to them and find out what they think would be helpful. And then be careful. If
Yeah.
something shows up on Google on the 37th page, then maybe it's not credible. Maybe you
Yeah.
should stick to the credible resources and the WebMD and listen to your doctor.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Gosh, I don't know why I'm getting so choked up today. Well, it's not true. My sister's birthday is next month, so I've been
Oh,
thinking a lot
oh,
about it. It's funny. We didn't get books, but that could have been because Amazon wasn't what it is now,
right.
even though I personally ordered a lot of books. But my our mother's side of the family is religious, and Adrian also had a few friends who were religious, and I think she got a Bible a week.
Yes. Yes.
And she said, "Why do people keep sending me Bibles?"
Yeah.
She goes, "I don't understand." And I said, "It's just good intentions, you
Yeah.
know." And so she had this stack of unopened, Bibles that were collecting dust. And after she died, I actually gave them all away to her friend's father's church or something. But I mean, some of them were even engraved with her name.
Oh, that's funny, Andrea, because we had the same issue. We had a bunch of Bibles, and
Did you?
afterwards we were going to throw away all these cancer books. And my wife actually said, "You're not allowed to throw away Bibles, are you? Like,
Yeah,
can you do that? Is that okay?" And I was like, "I
right.
don't know. Is that a sin? I don't know."
Yeah, that takes us into my next point that I just love. There isn't a deeper meaning of why we're sick. And I had a friend, and she was the first, I would say she's the first friend I lost in all this. And this was early. And she no longer lived in Los Angeles, but she was coming for a visit. And the time that she was coming for a visit happened to be when my sister, I knew we would be in the hospital for another round of chemo. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to be able to go to lunch with you. Just come on by. I'd love to see your daughter. I'd never seen her new baby." And it was crazy to me because she is in the healthcare profession, still is. And she acted like cancer was contagious. She
Yeah.
acted like somehow her 1-year-old was going to get cancer from my sister. And and then she said, famous words, God only gives you what you can handle. And I, of course, thought the perfect comeback hours later, but I was so stunned, I just said, "I got to go," and hung up. And that was the last
Yeah.
time we ever spoke.
Yeah.
And I really want you to talk about this because this hit home when I read this in your book. It really did.
Yeah, there's a lot to this. I don't think there's ever been anybody with a serious illness that hasn't said, "Why me?"
Yeah.
or "This isn't fair," or "I'm a good person. Why did this happen to me?" And one of the things that you have to realize with cancer is that there is no earning it or
No.
deserving it, or
No.
it doesn't pick certain people. You don't have to do anything special to get cancer. There's no secret to it. There's no higher meaning, right?
Yeah.
This phrase that you mentioned is one that always bothered me too. I heard it a lot. God
Yeah.
doesn't give you more than you can handle. And that always bothered me because it always made it seem to me that God gave me this then, like he was punishing me, or
Exactly.
like I did something wrong or something. And that's nonsense. Faith should be a source of comfort,
Yeah.
not not a thing that you hit people in the head with, right?
Yeah. I want to add just a shout out for people who feel the way we do. Great book. I think it's by Rabbi Harold Kushner, is When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And their son died from leukemia, I believe, when he was 12, and he dedicates the book to his son. But he talks about this idea of praying to God
Yeah,
for a miracle. And that was what I struggled with. It was like, well, if I pray, then I'm assuming God has the power to fix it, which means God maybe had the power to make it happen too. So I
right,
felt so conflicted. And I always refer people to that book now if this issue comes up. Because, yeah, if God only gives you what you can handle. So because you're a really strong person, you
right,
get cancer. It just, like,
right.
it on its face doesn't make sense, right? It
No,
just,
it makes no sense. And again, I appreciate the fact that people are trying to help. They're trying to
yeah,
be supportive, but this goes to the whole people don't know what to say.
yeah,
And they say the wrong thing.
yeah.
And as the
I just,
patient, you're thinking, why did you don't say
I,
that to me.
I gotta share with you in the chat, Marcello. Thank you so much. There's just an emoji, and it's this emoji. It's just so cute. I
Right,
love it.
right.
And again, if you have any questions for Paul, throw them in the comments. We can retrieve them from LinkedIn. If you're on YouTube and Facebook, we can't look at those comments just now, but I will make sure that he can answer them. So let's go to something a little less philosophical and a lot more
Okay.
practical, which I
Okay.
deeply appreciated. Was read the sheets provided by your pharmacist. And I always feel like the pharmacist is sort of left out of that care team, that multidisciplinary team, when they are so critical. And they may be the only person who actually sees every drug you're on at one time.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about reading those sheets and why it's important.
Yeah, and the pharmacist is a way better idea than trying to read those sheets because you're not going to understand them. But my point was that I had several situations while I was in the middle of my treatment where the example that I give is I was taking prednisone.
Mm-hmm.
And the only instruction that the doctor gave me when he wrote the script was take it with a meal. So, you go and they always say, do you have any questions? And I always say, no. And the bottle says right on it, take with meal. What am I supposed to ask? So for months, I wasn't sleeping. I would get ready for bed. I'd lay in bed and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. And then one day I was talking to the nurse and I was showing her, she was asking me about all my medications and I was showing her and she says, well, why are you taking prednisone at night? And I said, well, because I take it with a meal, dinner. And she said, well, it causes insomnia. Everyone knows that. And I
No,
thought,
they don't. No, not
right? I thought,
everyone knows that.
holy smokes. So for months, I haven't been sleeping. And I switched to prednisone to breakfast. And within days, I'm sleeping.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought,
Right?
someone should have told me that.
Yes.
I should have
Yes.
I should have done something, but I just didn't. I just took it
Well,
and
but it didn't even say that, right? And
I
yeah, I
I don't
just
know. I didn't read it.
yeah, right. That it's funny. It reminds me, not nearly as serious as cancer, but I had Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism, in my early 20s, and I didn't have health insurance, so I had to go to the Los Angeles County Free Clinic, which was always a
Mm,
delight, right? And wait 8 hours for my actual appointment, and they never told me after my thyroid was removed and I was on medication to take it in the morning. They never told me that it would peak after 4 hours and kind of go down from there. And so I think for 3 years, I took my thyroid meds at night. They told
right.
me to take it on an empty stomach, but they never said first thing in the morning. And finally, same thing. A nurse said, oh, and they said you can't take birth control at the same time. So I separated by 12 hours. And
Sure.
finally, a nurse looked at everything and asked me questions. And she said, that gives you energy. It needs to be taken first thing in the morning. You can take your birth control at night. That's not a problem. But, that gives you energy. I mean, and I've
Yeah.
always had trouble sleeping. So I was really
No,
frustrated
you're
by
right
that.
about the pharmacist, though. And
Yeah.
the question you might want to ask, because you don't know what the questions are. I wouldn't have
Right.
asked, is this going to make me stay awake at night? But is there anything I need to know? Like, what
Yes.
do I need to know about this drug?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, so good. And I don't think I even knew that about prednisone until I read it in your book. I
I
don't
don't
have
know.
that much experience with it. Um, so I want to talk about someone near and dear to you, your wife, Jackie. And I just got to read what Jackie and I have in common. So just got to read it. Direct quote here. Let's see. Let's see. Is it on page 3, 4? Let's see. Okay. Um, this is his wife, guys. So she was the student in high school who highlighted her notes in various colors and then made note cards to summarize what each color meant. And my comment was, haha, me too. I
Well,
color code everything.
well, listen, bless you, because everyone who's sick needs a caregiver like you and like Jackie, and I'm sure your sister benefited from that because we had file cabinets and notes
I'm
and those
sure.
little pocket folders, and I mean, just every time we would go to the doctor, she would tell them to talk slowly, and she would write down everything they said.
Yeah.
And
You have
Andrea,
to stay
that
organized. You have
it
to.
it you have to. And
Yeah.
if you're the patient, you need somebody like that
Yeah.
as your patient advocate,
You do.
because as the patient, you're so focused on the pain or the procedure or the whatever that you're not really hearing all of the other stuff that they're
Yeah.
throwing at you 5 minutes before you go into surgery, and they're like, here, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, okay. But there was a few times where it proved immensely helpful.
Yeah.
When you're in a major health system, especially if it's a teaching institution, you don't have a doctor. You have
Right.
12 doctors, and they
Yeah.
come in and they each do their little piece. and they each do their piece well. Thank God for doctors. But things can get missed. So
Yeah.
there was a couple of times where people would come in and prescribe a drug, and she would whip out her notes and she would say, "We were told not to take that drug, and
And
here's the
here's
person who
why.
said it. Here's when, and here it's blue, so you can see that means this." And the doctor would say, "Oh, okay, right, you're right. We'll
Yeah.
switch it to this other thing." And I don't know what would have happened if I would have taken the drug, but
Yeah.
thank goodness I didn't.
Yeah. My when we came in, I think it was our second round of chemo, they asked me a question about how much pain medication they given my sister during the first round. And when I asked them, why are you asking me? Look at her chart. They lost her chart. It was
Oh,
2001. It was when Children's Hospital Los Angeles was slowly going from paper records to digital records. And in that process, they lost the
oh,
entire first 2 weeks of my sister's cancer diagnosis. And I had so many detailed notes. And after that, I think I kept even more notes because I was
yeah.
just so stunned that they had actually lost it. And I want to share Marcello's comment about our previous topic. He said, I believe it's a combination of us trusting the doctor and the doctor assuming we know everything. So
I,
true.
yes, very
So
true.
true. Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so let me go on. Oh, wait, kudos to Jackie. I just want to give a big
Thank you.
holler out to
She's,
Jackie. So,
she's she gets a lot of practice. So
so you, like my sister, got to a point where you weren't eating. And I just want you to explain to people what this means. Swiss rolls, Spaghettios, and peanut butter. So, Paul, what do those three things have in common?
so I know I'm going to anger all the nutritionists out there. So
Don't
just
worry about it.
bear with me for a minute here. I've always been thin. But when I was going through my chemotherapy, I was of course nauseated all the time, and I just didn't want to eat. So I lost a tremendous amount of weight, and I wasn't getting the nutrition, and I was worried that they were going to put me on drugs, or they were going to put me in IV, or they were going to make me go back to the hospital or whatever. But my dear wife, so every time I would we would walk through the grocery store, and every time I would pause at an item or pick up an item, she would immediately grab it and throw it in the cart. Right? Anytime I said, I would see a commercial and I would think, oh, Spaghettios sound good. She would run to the store and buy Spaghettios just because she wanted me to eat anything.
Anything. Yeah.
Anything that went in my mouth was
Yeah.
better than nothing.
Nothing. Oh, I totally agree. You have to have energy to actually fight cancer. And if
Yeah.
you, it's, yeah, my sister, I remember there was a point where she was getting dehydrated, so I had to start monitoring her fluid intake, and she said water's boring, and so but I got her to she liked Powerade, and of course she liked blue Powerade because blue is her favorite color, and I was
Right?
like, whatever it takes, that's getting liquid in you. I don't care, blue Powerade it is. We'll just buy it all day long. And yeah, and same thing with food. I mean, she ended up losing about 20% of her body weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really devastating, so
Yeah. Nausea, anybody who has chemo knows that it's a big part of the chemotherapy. And you don't want to eat anything. And
yeah.
it's wrong, but how do you eat when you just feel like you're just gonna throw it up afterwards anyways, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
okay,
feed
this is
those
a
cravings.
yeah, so this is a little bit of, not a deep dive. We're not gonna go down a rabbit hole, but I am curious because it goes back to our earlier thing about the doctor, Marcello said, the doctor assuming you know, and you think the doctor's telling you everything. Um, we didn't ask about synthetic marijuana, Marinol. We didn't ask about that until we changed oncologist, and finally, I don't know if I thought to bring it up or what, but again, this was quite some time ago. And the new oncologist said, "Yeah, that can help her." And he said, "But actually smoking it was better than a synthetic pill." And of
Hmm.
course, I was like, "Well, I don't know where to get pot. I have no idea." And my sister's
Right.
in high school and she's like, "Oh, I know a few people, and it was just so funny, but she actually responded very well to the synthetic Marinol. And when I
Hmm.
saw how well she responded, when she ordered a plate of French fries and chicken wings, I was so
That's
excited,
awesome.
and I didn't understand why that wasn't offered at the beginning. I never understood that. So
Yeah.
were you offered anything like that to
No,
combat the
and
nausea?
actually, same kind of situation. My oncologist, who I love, she was amazing, right? We asked about diet and nutrition several times, and we always kind of got the same answer: high protein, low fat, high protein, low fat. You know, Western medicine, for all of its advances, really focus on drugs, surgery, you know, procedures, tests, and they oftentimes don't always encompass all the holistic pieces,
Yeah.
the nutrition and the other, you know, non-traditional therapies. And after the second or third time of asking her about it, she finally said, "Well, I'll hook you up with the nutritionist." And the nutritionist came in and gave us, you know, eat chicken, eat this, eat that, eat this, which is fine if you feel like
Like
eating.
eating. Yeah.
Right. And I remember this, you know, books and books and eat this and four vegetables a day and three meats a day and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not going to eat any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just don't see it happening.
So
So great in
did
theory, but
did they ever give you anything for nausea though? I mean, did they ever or
yeah.
did you ever try marijuana? Did you try anything on your
No,
own?
I didn't know about marijuana until that sounds super naive. I certainly didn't know about it when I was a 14-year-old,
Of course not. Yeah.
but as an adult, I really didn't consider that. I wish
Mm.
someone would have said, "Hey, here's an idea." A
Yeah.
couple of years later, after I was kind of in remission, a good friend of ours got cancer and pancreatic cancer, and he took marijuana, and it helped a lot.
Yeah.
And I think, boy, like no one mentioned that.
I know. I know. And it was California was one of the earlier states to pass it for medicinal use, and I was so grateful. You know, I really
Yeah,
was. It helped tremendously. For a
yeah,
short amount of time, my sister was able not to lose more weight. So I want to go to our next thing, Paul, and this is, I think, not unique to you, but certainly this is not everyone's experience. So the first time you were diagnosed with cancer, you were 14, and then you were diagnosed again 35 years later. And what I would like to know, just because I'm thinking of a friend of mine in the back of my head, she had lymphoma when she was, I think, 19 or 20, and then 20 years later had breast cancer. And they said it's a direct result of the radiation you had for lymphoma. So, can you tell us about the cancer you had when you were 14
yeah.
and if that treatment had any bearing on cancer 35 years later?
So much, so much. So I had Hodgkin's disease when I was 14, and this was the late 70s. This was 1979. And, you know, treatments in those days were a lot different. Pretty much, I went in for 6 weeks every day for 6 weeks, and I would lie on a X-ray table, like a table, and they would put a little piece of lead over where my heart is, and then just zap the rest of your body,
Gosh,
right?
wow.
So some of the side effects we were aware of. It
Okay.
killed all the muscle in my neck and shoulders, and I've had problems. I have bad teeth. But years later, there's so many things that I didn't know was going to happen. I had
Like what?
heart surgery a couple years ago, and the cardiologist said, "Oh yeah, everybody knows when you have radiation young, calcium builds up around your heart." And I thought everybody but one person.
Yeah. Well, too, your wife didn't know either, and she would have known.
Nobody told me that, right?
Yeah.
And ongoing issues with skin cancer and bad teeth. And we had fertility issues. We had difficulty conceiving our children. And every single time, Andrea, I would ask the doctor, "Oh, what about this?" He would say, "Oh, yeah, that's a common side effect of childhood cancer." And I think, okay, well, there's another one
Yeah.
that no one
Yeah.
mentioned to me, right? So it is super important, in my opinion, that you spend the time to ask, like, what's going to happen 20 years from now?
Yeah.
What are the common side effects from this?
Yeah.
Because
I totally
they're
agree.
huge.
Yeah, they
Cancer
are.
cancer never leaves you alone. It does, even when you're in remission. It doesn't stop being part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and while some people are more susceptible to cancer, I think most people don't realize, like, we're all capable of getting cancer. You
Yeah.
know, it's cells misbehaving essentially, you know, at its very core.
Yeah.
And so it's a possibility for anyone. I know someone I interviewed, so interesting, and she said, I did everything right. You know, I did everything I was supposed to do. I mean, she didn't use plastic. She didn't use a microwave. I mean, it was crazy, right? And
Right.
she did everything right. And she said, and then I still got cancer. So
Right.
she was like, forget it. You know, she still got it. So
Opposite happens too, right? You
yeah,
see people living out there and they're doing everything wrong and you think, "Why me? Like,
yeah,
why do I get it and they don't?" You
yeah,
know? That doesn't make
yeah.
any sense.
I think George Burns smoked till the day he died, and he was
Right?
what, 100?
Right? I'm just super good at it. That's all,
Yeah.
you know? It's one of my superpowers, I guess.
Oh,
I
no,
don't
it's
know.
not. Don't say that. Okay, so we have a great question here from Marcello. Thank you. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. He is asking you, what is the hardest about the mental battle you faced?
Yeah.
Good
So
question.
that's a great question. A quick story. I had been having, as an adult, I had been having stomach pains for weeks, and I had gone to the doctor a couple of times, and the doctor kept saying, "Oh, it's gas, it's acid, it's whatever. Take this antacid." So he was trying all these things, but I was going to work and I was working out every day and I was doing all my normal life things. I just had this persistent stomach pain. Finally, I had persuaded the doctor to let me have an ultrasound. So I went in and I had an ultrasound. And a few days later, he called me and he said, "Bad news. There's a bunch of tumors in your abdomen that look bad." And within hours, I went from being a fully functional adult with stomach aches to being almost completely incapacitated because of the mental, like, I knew it was cancer. And I had been
Mm.
waiting my whole life for cancer to come back. And
Oh,
here it was, decades later, come back to haunt me. And I pretty much curled up in a ball on my bed and I couldn't get up. I was exhausted. I was tired. And I know in hindsight, it was all mental.
yeah.
There was nothing physically that changed when I got that information.
Oh,
But the mental strain on it, there's such a natural tendency to do this negative spiral downwards. If people are there, they're talking about cancer. When they're not there, all you're thinking of is, you know, my life is terrible, everything's awful, this is horrible, and it just spirals down and down and down. The
yeah.
doctor gave me a 50-50 chance, and I had decided right away, well, that's it, you know, that's it, 50%. There's no way I'm going to beat those odds. And
Mm,
fortunately, there's enough people around me to, counteract that, to prop me up, to help.
yeah.
But I
Oh,
think there's such a natural tendency for cancer, or probably any serious illness, to just let their head go places it really shouldn't go.
yeah. Oh, and I want to quote from your book. You said, I have found that my ability to drill down and focus on the worst possible scenarios is so finely honed that I can create terminal cancer out of a stubbed toe.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything in my life, I'll get a sore throat and I'll be like, oh, I'll Google
Yeah.
throat cancer, or
Yeah. But I'm going to defend you because when the worst possible thing has happened to you, then you realize it could happen. Like it's like, oh, this really can happen. And I'm not that way so much about my physical health, but other people in my life who are so dear to me and something happens to them with their health, and I tend to go to the worst possible place. I never say
yeah.
that to them, but and I hate that I go there, but
I think it's natural. I,
yeah.
I think there's this natural tendency to fear, and we fear the worst. And I don't call it PTSD, call it whatever you want. But yeah, when anything happens to me, I immediately think, now the doctor I probably annoy the crap out of him now, because
Yeah.
every
That's
time I
okay.
go, I'll be like, well, I got this, my shoulder's been hurting. It's probably shoulder cancer. I need you to CAT scan it or something, right?
I want to thank Marcello for his participation, and I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. He says he's lost a few friends to cancer without having the chance to see them.
Mm,
And I know that with my sister, she consciously pushed people away. I mean, she was
yeah.
only 15 years old, but she consciously started to push friend by friend, including her boyfriend, away as she got worse. And
Yeah.
she never said it out loud, but I knew she didn't want her friends, who were all teenagers too, to remember her that way. She didn't want anyone to remember her being that sick
Yeah.
and frail. She got to a point where she was quite frail. Um,
Yeah.
Oh, Marcello, you're welcome. He says, "Thank you for sharing my hugs to both of you." Oh,
Thank you.
you're
That's
so
awesome.
welcome. Yeah,
Andrea, I spent years pretending like my childhood cancer never happened, avoiding it, lying about it,
why?
pretending
Why?
like it didn't happen because I didn't want to be that sick kid. I
Mhm.
wanted to be just Paul. I didn't want people to think of me as the cancer me.
Right.
And silly, I know. Now it's a different story. I'm older, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actively lied about it, avoided it. I was embarrassed. I don't know. It
Isn't
was
that
that whole idea that I didn't want to be that guy.
yeah. Yeah. I think I would say that I think that's true for the majority of patients. Even though I meet a lot of survivors who are now advocates, I would say that's not even 10% of people who've ever had cancer. I don't think people want to talk about it for the reason you
Yeah,
just gave. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be sort of pigeonholed
yeah.
in
I don't
that
want
way.
that to define me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to finish on one of my favorite things that you said, and I'm going to see if I can quote it, but let's see. And this is, I think, toward the end of your book, but you say, "You're so brave." That's a direct quote. And then you put, "I'm so brave because I have cancer." So I would love for you to talk about that.
I remember pulling up to my wife would drop me off at the chemo center and she would pull up and then she worked full time. So she would drop me off. I had an 8-hour chemo session and then she would go to work and then she would come back near the end of it and sit with me. And I remember getting out on several occasions, stepping out of the car and thinking, I could just run. I could just run for it. Like I don't have to go in there. Right.
Right?
And it always bothered me because I was terrified. I wasn't brave. I was terrified and I didn't do anything brave. I literally just didn't want to die.
Yeah.
So going to the treatments and having the tests and all of those things wasn't because there was this thing and I was like, I can do it. It was literally just I don't want to die, so I have to do this. And it always kind of embarrassed me and kind of infuriated me when people would say, "You're so brave, you're so brave." I I'm not brave when
Mhm.
it comes to cancer. I smile and I joke and I pretend like everything's fine. But inside, I'm terrified.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel brave.
Yeah. I know someone said to me one time during an interview, she said that people said that, "You're so brave. I would not be as brave as you if I had cancer." And she was always thinking, "You don't know how you're gonna act.
Yeah.
You have no idea what your response is going to be. It's such an unknown. You really,
Yeah.
really don't. Maybe
And
you'll act like me, maybe you won't." But, what I think is interesting is that I agree with you, but there's a great definition for courage, and it's been attributed to a lot of different people, so I won't say all the people, but it goes something like this. So, courage is not lack of fear. Courage is having the fear and moving forward
yeah.
anyway. So, I think in that sense, going to the chemo center, not running away, I think in that sense you were very courageous.
I understand that. I do. And I do think it is possible to handle adversity with grace and dignity.
Yeah.
I do think your response to a situation is important, especially in my situation when I have children
Yeah.
who I know are looking at me and are learning. how
Absolutely.
to handle adversity, which
Yeah.
someday they will certainly face. They will face their own adversity. So I guess for me, this quote was, I guess the point of this is use this quote with caution,
Yeah.
because uh, maybe under your definition, it meets the criteria. But Lord, I did not feel brave. And it bothered me when people would say that to me. So,
Yeah.
take
Oh.
it for what it is.
Okay, if you are watching and you have a question or comment for Paul, please put it. And if you're on LinkedIn, please tag him. Otherwise, he will not see it. Also, Paul is available on LinkedIn, Paul Stavros, Stavros. And please be sure to buy his book. I think you can get it anywhere. Am I right?
It's available on Amazon.
On Amazon. And the
Yeah.
book again is Don't Bring Lasagna. Love it. Tips when someone you love is dealing with cancer. So, and if you're interested in being on a live Ask the Author session, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. That's where I am the most active. And if I do invite you for an interview, please do what Paul did and send me a Kindle version of your book, because then I can print out all my fun, pretty notes, which really makes my life a lot easier. And Paul, thank you again for coming on and doing this deep dive with your book, which I think most people are going to find extremely helpful.
Andrea, thank you for doing what you do. You are a prolific champion of cancer people, so I appreciate it.
You're welcome.